Hello, everybody streaming in. Great to have you joining us today. We are going to have a lively conversation, my friends. So if you want to drop me a hello in the chat, always love hearing from everybody. Great to see some familiar names and some new friends. So thanks for joining us today, Jody and I. Talking about bangs as you come on. I felt like I needed, the only thing about getting bangs done in a, you know, there's all these memes about like, don't cut your bangs in the middle of a pandemic. And I will say, they're getting to the point now where I'm going to become like Cousin It, where I'm, it's I need the haircut and I'm afraid to go back in and, get my haircut now that we're
I hear ya.
Yet again. Are you guys in lockdown down where you are right now, Jody, or are you still able to wander around freely?
Well, things are opening up more, which they shouldn't because our cases are going straight up. Yeah, but, businesses are requiring masks and some people wear them down underneath their nose, which drives me crazy. That's my biggest pet peeve, by the way. Get it over your nose and mouth, everyone.
I know. What is that about?
I don't know.
And then I see people wearing it on their chin, which they say is the worst because you just collect bacteria there and then you put it on your face. Oh, the things we're talking about during a pandemic. Anyway, I'm going to give it one more minute to let people stream in a bit, and then we're going to get started because this is going to be a rich and lively conversation, everybody. So start thinking now about your questions. We're going to have Q&A going throughout the session. My colleague Leah is going to be keeping an eye on that for us. And yeah, so I see Mary Beth, you saying in Miami they wear them like bracelets. I just wish they wore them. Oh yeah. Yeah, the mask bracelet is a thing. I see it all the time up here too, unfortunately. There's some cute masks coming out though. This is a whole other industry that's popping up right now, is the masking industry. I was complimenting people on their ones in our local grocery store yesterday. Cute. All right. Well, I think we're going to get it underway. I know we've got a number of people that are streaming in, so we shall get going. So everybody, just as a quick, kind of reminder, we're keeping you muted. But feel free to use the Q&A function if you've got a question or you've just got an observation or comment, throw it in the chat or throw it in either. Leah's going to be monitoring it. She'll figure this out for us. But I am, and you know what, when we get to your question, if you want to unmute yourself, like if we're not kind of getting the gist of it, feel free to unmute yourself and come in and ask the question live. The whole goal for us with doing these is to really be able to give you what you need out of these conversations, right? We run a results only work environment at the roundtable, so I'll certainly share with you today our experience implementing it, but we're really lucky here to have with us today Jody Thompson, who is my longtime friend, yay! And founder of the results only work environment method, and writer of 2 books. And the one that probably started it all was really Why Work Sucks and How to Fix It. And before the call, we were having a conversation about the title of this book, because I was saying, and I think for me personally, because I love my job and I hope that people on the roundtable team don't feel that their work sucks. So that can be kind of a triggering thing, but tell us a little bit about where that title came from and what sort of, kind of spurred you on to do the work that you've been doing for the last decade plus.
So Glain, I'm glad you put that right out there at the beginning, why work sucks and how to fix it, because we had such a sort of a fight back and forth with our publisher about that. Because the big, splash on the front of the book is work sucks. And we know for people, it's not the work that sucks. It's the way that we're forced to do it.
Right.
It's not having control over our time. So we have to explain that often. We have to explain, well, it's not your work. We get that. And so that's been a little bit difficult for us, but they told us this is going to sell books. So that's what we're going to call it. And we said, okay, then. We're in. And then the next book that came out, Why Managing Sucks and How to Fix It, people said, well, the managers don't suck. but it's not why managers suck. It's why managing sucks and how
I
to
would
fix
say
it.
managing
Right?
does suck. Like I have a chapter in my book that I was on a podcast the other day and somebody called me out on it. They said, I love that your first chapter of your book was leadership can sometimes suck. Because I think that's the part. Like there's
Yes.
so many people in our industry that talk about, the perfect, if you're the perfect leader, it's like you're doing nothing wrong and that you're skipping into work every day. And it sucks to have to give somebody a really tough, conversation around their results or the fact that they're in the wrong role. Or like, if you care about people, there's aspects of leadership that just really do suck. So I'm totally on that tour with you.
Yep.
So tell us a bit about how Row got started and what kind of, in the quick highlight reel, how you got into this work and what spurred you on to want to make a difference around this.
So it was interesting when we started to think about human capital and how to get the best out of human capital. And I was in HR at the time. I was in change management at Best Buy. And one of the things that we were trying to figure out was the whole idea of flexibility. Like, how do we create a flexible workplace?
Yeah.
And
we're hearing that a lot right now, I have to say, with the
absolutely
whole, in the pandemic, this flexibility term is getting a resurgence.
Yeah, and we're going to take that word and we're going to throw it back to 1990 today. Goodbye. That's old. So it was interesting because what we did at Best Buy is we were talking to a particular leader and he said, I don't want to see any benchmarking. If I see one benchmark come in, I don't want to talk to you guys. So what we did is we actually thought about, what is it that people really want? And we decided people don't want flexibility. And here's why they don't want that. Flexibility is a managed program. So flexibility really is inflexible. So I still have to go to my manager or supervisor and ask permission to leave early on a Friday or go to the dentist on a Tuesday. Or I have to let somebody know, same thing. So I'm still in a system where I'm in a permission granting system. So we sat back and we thought, I wonder if we changed that relationship so that people are completely autonomous. Nobody's telling people where they are and when they're working, and they're not asking permission at all. And when we started to experiment with that, it was unbelievable what happened to the human spirit. Because now my manager, I feel like an adult. And now it begs the question, if I'm autonomous and free, do I really understand what my results are? Do I know? Because now I'm not using just showing up and putting in hours. I have to actually think about the real work and how I'm going to measure it. And that's the kind of things that started to happen that we were so surprised at, how people got very focused on what is my purpose in the organization and how am I going to measure that? Whereas before they were like, well, I put in 50 hours last week.
Yeah.
So we're completely changing the language. And over the last 16 years, as we've been implementing this in organizations, there's a lot of positive unintended consequences that come out of this that you never would imagine or see that are helping business succeed, right? It's out in the community, so it's helping us attach better to our communities. And it's personally liberating. And when you're liberated in that way and you own your time, you just do better in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting because when I was introduced to your work many years ago, I would say that for me personally, it sounded super utopian. Like, it's like, wow, this sounds great. Like, this is, the way I want to work, and I know you use the phrase a lot. It's the adult workplace, right? Where we're not being overseen and managed by our time and everything else. I will say, though, it was a journey for me personally as a manager to wrap my head around what it really meant to be a results coach as opposed to a manager of time. And I'm curious, as you in all of the places that you've brought Row into and all of the organizations that you've worked with, My guess is that it's not for everybody. My guess is that there are certain organizations and certain leaders that can embrace this concept and others that just can't. So for all the folks that are on the call that are listening in and curious about, is a row workplace something that would work in my organization? What's been your observation? Like, what are the characteristics or things that people need to really think about?
So first of all, what I'd like your audience to know today is that results only work environment is about one thing. And I think we all know what that is. That's getting results. So why wouldn't you want every job and every role and every position in the world to focus on that? Results. So it works for, location specific roles. We've done it on manufacturing lines. We've done it with construction workers, call centers. I mean, you name it. So the idea behind results only work environment is it levels the playing field and every person is autonomous and accountable, which is really the what makes business successful. Now, what we're finding though, when your audience today is thinking about your leadership, there's one thing that's very important when you're thinking about adaptive change like this, is that the leader that would want to bring this into your organization and invest emotionally and, monetarily, financially in this, they have to have curiosity. They have to be open to thinking about something in a different way and be confident and courageous. So I know you on the call today, if you're thinking, oh yeah, I know a leader like that. That's the person who's going to be open. And I have to say that I've done a lot of work up in Canada. And do I sound Canadian yet? Not really, right? I'm trying.
A's, I think.
Yeah.
Say about the way we say
about.
it.
Okay, I'm gonna work on that. So I've worked in Canada. What I find in Canada, different than say the US or the UK or other areas I've worked in, is you already are a culture that's more open. You're more curious, you just are in the people I've talked to. So I think you'll probably have an easier time thinking about who that leader is that would be open to not, this is important, not trying to preserve your culture. Now is not the time to preserve your culture. Now is the time to evolve your culture.
Yeah, let's pause on that for a second. I think one of the things you and I were sort of chatting about, and we work with so many clients, and I know we've got quite a few folks in HR on the call today, and
happy about that.
There's been a huge consumption right now of people's energy towards figuring out, where do we put the stickers on the floor, and how do we make sure that people don't go into the bathroom too many numbers at a time, and all of these kinds of things, because we're so focused on how do we get people back into the workplace. And I was just talking to one of my clients yesterday who was originally intending to go back in January. Now it's May. And I think I think the realization is slowly sinking in for people. Those of us that are really optimistic, we're hoping this thing was going to last 2 weeks. I put myself in that camp.
Right, me
now
too.
we're all sort of facing this reality. And I think the thing you and I have talked about, over these last few months is this idea that we seem to be on this path to try and go back to what it was. And yet here's just this amazing opportunity that we're being given to say, wait a second, 60-hour work weeks weren't great. Being in meetings back to back to back to back and having to do my work after I put the kids to bed was not great. So why are we trying to rush back to recreate that system or to go back into that system? But I truly believe it's because we're not clear on what are the options, right? And how can we do this differently? And I know you're pretty passionate about saying, like, why do we want to re-enter work? Right? It's like, I think we talked about the analogy of the rocket ship burning through the atmosphere, entering work, right? Metaphor. So, I mean, what do you think really, what is the opportunity for organizations right now to rethink this? Like, what would be some of the things that, you could see if we shifted more to this results only kind of focus? What would that open up for organizations and teams? And
well, first of all, I want to say a couple things just to get people's mindset thinking in a different way. First of all, one of the things I've been hearing, just like you have, Glain, and everybody on the call, is we want to get back to work. You're already working.
Yeah.
You're not going back there. You're doing it now.
You're doing
That's
it
the
now.
first thing, right?
Yeah.
And what's troubling to people, and Gallup has done a lot of surveys on this, is when you were in the office every day, you didn't have complete autonomy and free choice. That's the way everybody did things in the office. And so if you wanted to work from home or somewhere else, you had to let somebody know or ask permission. So you still weren't in control. Same thing today. Now we're all in our houses. We don't have the choice to go in the office if we want to. We don't have the choice to go to a coffee shop. We're still trapped. So the Gallup surveys that have been coming out have been showing, half the people are saying, I want to get back in the office, and half the people are saying, I want to stay at home. But what people really want is to make that decision every day based on the actual work.
Yes.
So that I'm where I need to be when I need to be there. Now let's talk about stickers on the floor. It's important that the buildings that we go into, whether it be a grocery store, an office, wherever that is, that there's protocols in place that keep us safe right now.
Right.
So if I want to go into an office because there's an activity that I need to do there to get my work done, and I choose that location, then yes, it needs to be sanitized. We need to stay 6 feet apart, whatever those protocols are. But the idea that we need a one-to-one relationship with a person and a workstation is outdated thinking. We don't need that anymore. We need the office to be a tool that we use when we need it, if we need it. And everyone having the choice to work from wherever they're most effective. But that begs the question again, everybody on the call, we have to be clear about what our measurable results need to be so that we can go after them in a way that makes sense. When we're unclear, we default to putting in time at a location and doing a lot of activities like going to meetings because that looks like work. And oftentimes it's wasted time. We ask people all the time, how much of your time during the week is spent on unproductive meetings or wasted time? And they say 30 to 90% of their time.
Yeah.
Why is
Meetings
that?
are huge. Meetings are
It's huge. In a results only work environment, that drops way off because meetings are just one activity that you choose to get work done. And oftentimes it's not the right one. You don't just have a meeting to have a meeting. You don't have to fill the time.
Yeah.
But you do have to get results. That's what's important.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I had an experience with a client last year. My team and I were working on a project, and each time we would go into the client, there'd be different people sitting in the meeting, and many people sitting in a meeting for a very small project. This was not a, $1 million intervention. This was a very small project. And I had another friend who happens to work for that company, and I said to her, I said, it's really strange. There's all these people sitting in meetings and we're not really clear what their roles are or what they're there to do, or like is that and she said, well, we're so busy here that what people do is they sit in meetings so that they know what's going on.
Oh, Glain.
Wow, like this is and if you were to put a dollar amount on all of those people and the amount of time that is spent, and I think you said to me, when people are feeling the need to be in meetings, and I hear that a lot, like people say, well, everybody has to be in that meeting or everybody has to come to that meeting. What's your take on why do people behave that way in organizations? What's really going on there for people?
First of all, the interesting thing about a meeting is if you're at a meeting, you look like you're working.
True.
So and by the way, all those meetings that waste time are something we can talk about as, oh my gosh, I'm so overworked, I'm so tired, I'm this and that, I have to do my work at night. But yet we sit in those meetings. Now, going to a lot of meetings because it looks like work and because we have to fill our time during the day and we don't know what we're doing, that's our default. When you're clear about what you need to do and you start pushing back on these meetings, what is my role? I see you invited me to this meeting. What's my role and what's the outcome? Because I need to make the decision about, is that the right use of my time right now to get to where I need to get? But that's because I'm clear about my results. So we're going to continue to fill our time with meetings and just talk about stuff until we get to the point where we are all autonomous and accountable and communicating with each other about the work and not filling our time in meetings. Now, I feel like it's hard for people to think about what am I going to do all day if there's not meetings? And that's where your space is. When you ask yourself, what am I going to do all day? First of all, you don't have to fill time. Ask yourself this question. Am I clear about the measure of my work? Am I clear about that with my manager? That's what I should be focusing on. Not if I get on my computer at 8 o'clock in the morning and stay on it till 5 and feel guilty about walking my dog in the middle of the day. You know, we are time fillers because work, you know, over the last 75 years has been, the measure of work has been about time and presence. Yeah. And then that should equal results.
It's the punch clock, right? Like we're still in a punch clock mentality, even though that machine may not be sitting in your, for most of us, it's not sitting in our office, right?
It's sitting in our hearts.
It's sitting in our hearts.
That's where it is. And guess what? Go around and ask people how many hours they worked last week. They're all going to give you a number. If you ask somebody in a results only work environment, how many hours did you work last week? They're going to look at you with a blank stare and go, I don't understand the question. They're going to go, I have no idea. I don't think that way anymore.
Right.
It's just about getting work done.
What's the question that you ask in a results only environment? What are the results you delivered last week?
Right. Well, yeah, if you talk to CMHC, right in your own backyard up there, all across the country, and you ask them, so, you know, how did you manage when COVID came in? And their answer is going to be, well, we just kept doing our work. You know, 40% of us are at home and 20% of us are doing this. And, you know, they don't talk like that. They just say, well, we just kept working. But see, because they're making the choice all the time anyway about how to be most efficient and effective, and they're communicating clearly about what they need and when they need it, they don't need to focus on location. Yeah. And so when COVID came in, they just kept going.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that happens, and I think we were seeing a bit of this pattern with when people did start to go out, is that all of a sudden managers who were used to kind of doing the drive-bys, you know, that, hey, what are you working on? What's going on? Da, da, da. Like that all got replaced in the pandemic with Zoom meetings, right? Like, let's do these check-in Zoom meetings. And then, you know, there was all this crazy talk about people installing software on their employees' computers to monitor how much they were working. Like, oh my gosh, talk about George Orwell and demonstrating a whole lack of trust. Like, you know, I think one of the interesting things is, you know, we talk about high performance teams need psychological safety and trust. And yet then we're putting in all of these, like, it's almost like, let's get back in the office so I can actually make sure you're working and you're not taking your dog for a walk at 2 p.m.
Right.
Because that doesn't matter if the person's delivering results.
Right. And because we're not clear on that, we never really know if they're delivering. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're paying people, the organization pays people for a block of time.
Yeah.
That's how we think today over the last 75 years. So I pay you to put in your 37 and a half hours or 40 hours, or at least full time is what I'm paying you for. So even if you're not getting results and we're not clear, at least you're doing your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where we have to break it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, and then you get all these default behaviors in organizations where I'm in those meetings because I'm afraid that I'm going to miss something, and I'm not going to know what's going on. Oh, I see Leah popping on. It must mean she's got a question from the group. Hey, Leah.
Hey, everyone. Dried my hair for the occasion. So yes, Mo, one of our roundtable alumni, he has a question. And the question is, have you ever implemented ROW in software teams or teams that rely a lot on collaborative work? Was there anything different between those types of environments and others?
Oh, great question.
So that's a great question, Mo. I mean, so yes, we have, by the way. We've implemented with teams that are, you know, very collaborative or need to be collaborative, like software teams. But here's the thing. Collaboration has to depend on what the outcome is that this team is delivering, right? So I have to understand what that is so that my collaboration is effective. I don't just collaborate to collaborate. So what we do in a results only work environment is we take out all ambiguity in language. So I wouldn't say to somebody on my software team, hey, can you get me that code ASAP? Because as soon as possible doesn't mean anything. I don't know when you need it. So even software teams, doesn't matter what kind of team you're on, we take communication up another notch and take out ambiguity and make things much clearer, what happens on these teams is work starts to get done faster. It accelerates. Because now, if I have a sea of ASAPs, 10 people want something ASAP, I don't know how to manage myself. I don't know who needs it first, and I start guessing, and then I think about it hierarchically. Well, I'm going to get Glain hers first because she's above Leah, or however I think about that. And I'm going to make the wrong decisions. And then people are going to be coming to me and saying, why don't I have that? Why don't I have that? Well, you said ASAP. Well, I meant 5 minutes. Well, I thought you meant before the end of the week. So this is what's happening in people's brains. And so, yes, Mo, we have done it on these teams, but there's so much about the foundational elements of how we think about our own selves in terms of the work that needs to get done. That's going to build trust and pull the teams together if we can get clear on results and communicate clearly without ambiguity. I hope that answered your question. If not, throw me another one.
I think this is the thing. This is the thing that I, as a manager leader, have really learned about myself. And when we did the road training with the team, I know we had a whole bunch of ahas, because you have this great language of sludge that exists in organization. And if I think as a manager of the amount of time over my career that I have spent wading through sludge with people, right? Well, how come so-and-so got to leave early? And oh, I wish I was a smoker, because then I take like 6 breaks a day and like all of that stuff you talk about as really being, this is the sludge in our organizations, this sort of ways of thinking and comparison other and all of those things that kind of go on. And yet we don't have a language to talk about results in a way that, you know, we feel, well, I can't tell the boss I'm not going to go to that meeting. I just need to show up there because they put me on the agenda. I can't question. Like, it's almost like you need to really ingrain that new habit and behavior of results language and make it okay for everybody to talk about results.
Right.
Also, it's owned within the whole team. Like when we went through the training, I know that my colleague Shelby, who is sitting on this call, and if she's brave enough, could jump on and just share that there was some big ahas around the sludge that, you know, she was sort of holding against other people. Oh, there she is. She's going to come on and do a confessional.
There's
Shelby,
our resident sludger.
Shelby, what did you learn about sludge when we went through the road training?
Well, I left the training feeling very bad about all of these nonsensical judgments that I was making on others, on myself, which had zero reflection on the results. And everyone on my team will tell you that for the rest of the day, I was just sitting like this, feeling so bad because none of these things had anything to do with results, and especially I think for all of us, the self sludge. Oh, well, I can't leave, or I got to tell somebody where I'm going because I'm going for a walk for 30 minutes, and but nothing to do with the results. It's only the results that matter. So I've had a lot of ahas, and I'm no longer a sludger for the most part.
We'll send you a no sludge button.
Yeah.
You know, sludge is an interesting thing. I'm going to tell you what sludge does. Sludge is it permeates culture, and it's what holds culture together.
Yeah.
So if the culture is basically of a mindset of 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, that's kind of how we do things inside that box. Anytime somebody does anything different that we don't think we're getting ourselves, we notice it because it's off culture.
Right.
So if I'm in an office building and I see Glain get up and walk out at 3 o'clock, I'm going to be like, how come she gets to leave early?
Oh, totally.
Right. And so I'm thinking I don't get to do that. And I want her to get snapped back into the culture. So if I can start talking about Glain or asking her why she left early, or going to my manager and asking if I can do that too, it will snap Glain back in place, because he'll say, you know, you got to really stay till 5. And now we're in that permission granting again. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure the culture remains stable. So that's what sludge does. And sludge is happening today. You know, I can't believe that John gets to golf in the afternoon just because we're working from home now.
Mhm.
How come Leah doesn't get on at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm looking all over for her on Skype and she's never green.
Mhm.
You know, people are using all these cues
Yeah.
to see if people are in the box.
Yeah.
And what we do is we have an environmental sludge eradication strategy that breaks that cycle. And I like what you said, Glain. You said, how do we just remove that and talk about results, right? How do we get our language over there? And this is culture is held together by language.
Yeah.
And so we eradicate sludge by using an eradication strategy. And then all that's left is talking about results.
Yeah.
Because we can't judge each other.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, so I would, in the work that we do, because we're always looking at the behavior, and I always think like it's behavior that creates culture. And then our research partner has done a lot of, sort of research on, the two big sides of the balance sheet, right? There's the results drive, and then there's the empathy side, like caring about people and that type of thing. And less than 1% of leaders balance both. Most lean one way or they lean the other, right?
Yep.
So you see organizations that are extremely results focused, not in the way that I believe you mean row to be. They are just grinding people, push, result. And some people are tired, they're exhausted, they're burnt out, they're in tons of stupid meetings because everything's a fire drill, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Yet the other side, which I would say is the roundtable culture. The roundtable culture, we have a value in our company. It's on our wall. And one of our values is get shit done. Apologies to anybody who's got sensitive leaders. That is one of our values at the roundtable. And so, we have always talked about results, but my team and collectively, we're a very collaborative, collegial, team-focused organization. And I think one of the realizations we had a little bit was that, results might have been talked to one-to-one with maybe a manager and their direct report, but it was almost within the culture didn't feel brave enough to call out a peer if the peer wasn't delivering on results.
Correct.
Right? We are in a very hierarchical mindset in our organizations, I think. And I think that's one of the other things that needs to have the back broken. We sort of make it the manager's responsibility to talk about results, whereas I think my feeling, and after certainly when we went through it as a team, is that it's a shared responsibility to create and uphold this kind of culture. This is not about all on the backs of the managers. This is actually a collective movement that we're all going to become more results focused, right?
Which is really exciting. And when I talk to organizations about what some of their challenges are, they often tell me that they're siloed.
Yeah.
And I call that departmentally organized. Instead of being organizationally oriented, they're departmentally oriented. And so it's exactly what you're saying. What results only in the work environment does is it connects us organizationally. And the reason is because we're all focused on the same outcome and the same customer. And as that goes down through the organization, we're all asking ourselves, how do I affect that? And so what's interesting, a lot of times when we're all just running around to meetings and everything, and somebody from another department says, "Hey, can you get this for me or do something for this for me?" We're like, "No, don't have time, too busy, whatever."
Yeah.
Because we're still in that department feeling. But if somebody in a row, we're talking across departments because we're all, like you just said, in it together. I'm going to give you an analogy. If I said to your group today, tomorrow morning, we're going to go on a vacation together. Meet me at 9 a.m. What's the first question you should ask me? Put it in the chat box. We're going to go on vacation tomorrow. Meet me at 9 a.m.
What do you guys think?
At a location, at this building. Meet me there at 9 a.m. We're going on vacation. What do you need to ask me first? Anybody, put it in the chat.
I want to know who's paying.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
Melanie Campbell was the first one with the right question. Where are we going? Now think about that. Now think about yourself as an organization. and nobody knows where we're going. Now let's pretend we're going to Hawaii, but I didn't tell anybody that, so we don't know.
Yeah.
So now we've got, you know, Mary Beth, she's packing for a snow trip because she doesn't know we're going to Hawaii. And the people that do travel, they're sending us all over the world because they don't know where we're going. And, you know, so the people that are doing the money piece of it don't know how many people are going, and they don't know where we're going, so they can't figure that out. And that's an organization today. And everybody's busy doing things, and we don't know where we're going. And so now what happens in results only work environment is everybody's clear. Hawaii. So that the activities of work and the time we spend and the energy we expend is all going the same way. And to your point, Glain, if I look over at you and you're the packing committee and I see you putting snow pants in there, I'm going to ask you, why are you packing snow pants? We're going to Hawaii. And you'll say, oh, I thought we were going to go up in the mountains when we were there. No, look at the schedule. That's not one of our activities when we're there, so we don't need snow pants. Because now if we all pack snow clothes and we get to Hawaii, what are we going to have to do when we get there? We don't have what we need. We don't have the tools we need. We're paralyzed. So really, I like what you're saying about how sometimes it feels like a one-to-one conversation, but what results only work environment does is it opens everybody up to focusing in the same direction and holding each other accountable no matter what department you're in. Always asking the questions.
Yeah, and you know what, I think these are small things. I think sometimes when, I know in the past when I've chatted with people about thinking about row, it feels really complicated. It feels like this is going to be so hard to implement. And yet what you realize, like just even in our little team, the shift when people will send out emails saying, I need this by this date. I need, like, these are small things. But like a collaborative culture that doesn't want to impose deadlines on people, doesn't want to add to other people's workload, is being too nice about being, you know, specific on what they want. When you give everybody permission to say that, or when you reply back and say, can you put this in a row for me? Because I don't know when you need it by. It just, you know, it's like you create a shorthand within an organization that gives people permission not to feel like they're the only person doing that. It
really does empower people. The thing is when organizations try to take bits and pieces of what they're hearing today, because it's logical, and then they try to implement it. It's like, there's so many little pieces, right? And a process that people go through to rewire their brain that's missed when you try to do it yourself. So what we create is we have a system whereby we create smart mobs of people self-correcting each other as they move forward and evolve the culture. And it's exactly what you said. They all have permission because it's everybody's job to make this happen. Not the leaders, just the leaders. It's not a top-down thing. It's all of us together. And that's, I think, sometimes what people miss in change management. Now, when you're doing technical change, that's one thing. It's just, you know, do it this way. But when you're trying to get people to adapt to something like you're talking about, this language change, when I feel uncomfortable, if I say, get it to me by this time, I feel like I'm imposing on you. To get that out of our DNA and out of our system, we have to feel support all around us, up the chain, down the chain, sideways, everywhere. We have to feel like we're all in it together. And that's what we do.
So Melanie has just asked the question that and you know, I've talked to you about this in the past, is she said, how do we get past ego and fear? There's sometimes a real resistance to peer correction. And I would say, here's the other thing about, like, when you think about being results only and you say, okay, I'm not going to worry about where my people are right now. And you know, because they're going to be delivering results. I think there's a lot of managers, put myself in that camp, that enjoy being in charge, directing other people's efforts, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So talk me through that, because I think it all sounds great in theory, but what if you've got somebody who's really insecure? You got somebody who likes to hoard power. You've got somebody who, you know, the thought of giving their team that much latitude is scary. So talk us through, can you shift people like that, I guess, and get them behind the row? What do you know?
Yes, we can. So the fear that we have, and that idea that we can't really trust people, even though we might say we do, is because we're really good at orchestrating where people are, okay, and what time they're working. And when that's what we think about first, and not is everybody clear about results, measurable results of their job, we can keep defaulting to that. When all of a sudden you pull that out from under me, and I realize I'm a manager, and I realize I have never really had the right conversations to get clear about the actual work. I'm going to fight to stop this because I feel uncomfortable. But we don't leave managers floundering around. We have a whole section of things we do to help them shift their language and come along in a different way and have different conversations. And the best part is, it's not the manager's job to push the goals down to people in a row. It's the team's work with their manager or supervisor to figure it out together. So the manager doesn't feel that it's not vertically hierarchical, it's horizontally hierarchical. I still have a manager, a results coach, but we're in it together and we're figuring it out together. So collaboration actually increases. And that feeling of control that managers have really isn't healthy. We're shifting their control from controlling people to actually managing work. And that control of people really isn't, all that we think it is as a human being.
Yeah.
We'd much rather be together solving problems and moving things forward, and not feeling like we have a parent giving us permission to go to the dentist on Tuesday. That's a different relationship.
Connected, though. It's also connected, because if you as a manager are not really clear on your own deliverables, right? Depending on where you are in the hierarchy, right? If you're not super clear, it's going to be hard for you to be really clear. So part of this work, I think, if you were to, think about how do I turn even my team into more of a row and, try and make some steps in this direction, that's almost your first step. Like you're really going to have to make sure you're super clear on what your division's being asked to drive against.
Well, and here's what's cool about that. And you're right. But when we come into an organization and we start the process, not just the training process, but understanding who you are and what makes you tick and what your language is, and we take you into training, what happens with managers is they start to push up and down against each other.
Right.
Because they realize when we start pulling out those things that they used to hang on to, they start coming slowly away. It's not a flip of a switch, it's an evolution. And those things start going when they start to go, wait a minute, we're not clear all the way from the top.
Right.
Now, if you try to tell people to do that before we come in, everybody needs to be clear. They'll never get clear because they don't have to, because they're still depending on those old ideas of time plus presence. That is in the DNA of the culture. We have to pull that out so that it becomes glaringly obvious what we have to do.
Yeah.
And that's get clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It really reminds me of, like, in the work that we do, and I know we've got a few folks on the call that have been through the roundtable program, and one of the things that we started doing really early on, because our program, we're helping leaders shift a behavior that's really critical, right, for their impact. And when I used to start it, I would have a conversation with their manager separate from them, and then I would have the conversation with the individual. And we started to realize that there was an alignment in that we needed together, because some bosses were not that great at articulating behavioral expectations. And so that when you say it goes up and down, like, I see that in our program, that we actually, even though the program is about the individual going through our program, the manager who's involved as a sponsor or in some way gets pulled into the process, because they need to be clear and hyper clear so that individual can be working on the right goal for themselves through the process, right? So I really see how you can start to you create ripples in organizations, I think, in this sort of an approach, right?
You absolutely do. It's kind of viral, and I think too, and this will probably resonate with your audience today. is that there's always the good manager and a bad manager, right? So there's, and you see this, people moving around an organization because they don't want to work for that guy, but they'll work for this guy.
Yeah.
What results only work environment does is it changes that, because all the managers, all the leadership, they're on the same mindset platform. So they can't be the one that gives everybody Friday off, or lets everybody leave early and come in late, or this manager doesn't allow that. And we're all trying to get to that place where we really have control and feel good about what we're doing. So we're trying to find that manager that'll give us that. Wonder if all the managers in the organization could give you that. Think of the power of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the language is the same, and the support, and you're organizationally oriented, and everybody knows we're going to Hawaii. What a beautiful thing that would be.
Yeah.
We could actually spend our time on what matters and what's relevant and what's important, instead of feeling like our whole life is spent doing time.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit you with a hard question here, and everybody on the call, start thinking about your hard questions, because I'm gonna put the real deal. Okay.
Oh,
so
look at the time. I have to go to a meeting.
you have to go now. Here's a bit of my, growing up in organizations theory. For me personally, I love a row. I mean, I think that's why I left organizations, because the independence that I need is extremely high. I like, I always used to say when I worked for other people, show me the end game and then please get the hell out of my way. Like the more you start interfering, the worse it's going to be for you, because I'm annoying when I'm not I'm a great employee until I'm not a good employee. And then, let's watch out. Right. And so I think about this and I think, I bet you there's a bunch of people that would love to work in a row. I bet you there's a whole bunch of other people that when you start saying, show up, like, what are your results? They're going to be like, okay, I got to pack up shop and leave, because I'm guessing it's not for, as much as we say people want this flexibility, well, I said the F word.
Yes, I wrote that down.
People want this. I think to myself, I think there's a lot of people that hide behind busy in organizations. And as soon as you start to put a spotlight on the fact that they're not delivering results, they can't hide anymore. And in fact, you could probably lose a bunch of people, and it's not for everybody. So what's your response to that?
Oh, do I have a response? That was a tough one now. And I agree. I totally hear you. Now I'm going to tell you first, the number one reason people want to work at CMHC now is row. So when they're bringing candidates in and asking them the question, why did you want to work here? And there's a bunch of answers. Row is number one.
Yeah.
Now, if you have somebody in your organization that's hiding underneath the time clock and doesn't really want to do the work, do you want them in your organization? No. So what we're doing is we're saying, oh, some people can't do this. Can't do what? You're paying them to get results.
Right.
What do you mean? What can't they do? So what results only work environment does is it gives everybody the choice. Step up or go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And guess what? 99% of people step up. Here's the difference. In an organization today, we have the high performers, the medium, and the low.
Yeah.
And in row, it's just perform.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
It really sort of changes, like those old methods. I remember Jack Welch was such a fan of top grading, right, at GE, where you'd have your top 20%, your middle 70, your bottom 10,
right,
and turn out your bottom 10, right? It really, like, my guess is that the bottom 10 will voluntarily leave, and what you do then is everybody else is just delivering results. Like, it really would change the game on how we measure performance and the amount of time that HR people spend doing 9 boxes. What happens to the HR team around this? I'm kind of curious, because I think a lot of HR people dealing with sludge. Like, that's my guess, is that what then becomes the role of the HR department in a results only work environment?
You know what's interesting about that question is HR knows who they want to be. But because of the system they're in, they can't get there. And so what HR HR has an important role in a number of facets. And if I had my HR person on today, she'd go crazy in telling you this. But first of all, we want to be partners to the business, right?
Yeah.
We want to help them have the talent density they need to achieve results. But we're bogged down in a whole bunch of punitive, measures and rules and guidelines and things that we're trying to, we're like, if you get called to HR, you're terrified.
Yeah.
Oh no, HR wants to see me. What did I do wrong? That's kind of, it's like going to the principal's office. We have to flip that. Human resources can be a viable heartbeat for the business if they don't have to be the ones that come in when somebody hasn't been performing for a year and try to exit them when the manager never even wrote down anything about what they didn't do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's also confusing and not clear. So it's amazing how when we've gone through and we've worked with HR teams, because when we're in an organization, they're usually the first ones that we take through training. Because we need them to understand the culture is going to shift. This is what's going to be important. These are the rules that are not going to be what you're going to have to deal with anymore. But then what comes out of that is the real work of human resources and what it should be in the future. And that's guiding the business towards having the best human capital that can do the best work so that they can achieve their results.
Yeah, it's such a, I mean, to me, that is truly moving HR to the strategic partner in the business, right? And
right.
This policing.
And that's what they want to be.
Yeah, 100%. Been talking about it for, I feel, decades.
Yeah, and we can keep talking and talking and talking and talking and how we're going to preserve culture, but we have to stop doing that.
Well, and I think the problem is, what I see anyway, is that it gets thrown at HR that they own culture. HR doesn't own culture.
No, they don't.
You
culture
know,
is owned by everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Like everybody owns culture. You
Right.
can't be the owner of culture.
No.
So I know
Nobody
we're
owns
coming
it.
up on this hour has gone so fast. So guys, if you've got more questions, throw them in the chat for me because we're coming up to the end of time. I know we could probably talk to Jody all day, but Jody, I know you've really done some amazing work with CMHC in Canada recently, and I'm sure that there's people on the call that are like, okay, but how does this really translate into business results? And what would you expect to see in an organization? I mean, we talked about client engagement. You talked about, kind of more focused time on output as opposed to sitting and wasting time meetings. What other things did CMHC as an example? It's great to paint a specific picture. See?
So their return on investment is 200 million. 200
million?
Yes.
What? How? Okay, there's my skeptical. How?
So there's so many things. So when we started with CMHC, they were looking at three things: culture, technology, and space.
Yeah.
They wanted to reduce their space needs by 40%. I think the number right now is 75%. Now, it's not that we don't need offices, but when you start thinking differently about the space that people need to get work done,
right.
You don't need
how
that
you
much.
use office space,
right?
Yeah.
So they're saving an inordinate amount of money. And this is in an article. We can send your an article to you to send out to your
listeners. We'll send it out as an attachment.
Yeah, and I think that'll help. And plus all the things that you want: attraction to the organization, engagement, productivity, all those measures. If you're doing pulse surveys and you're watching for certain metrics to go up, those are the ones that are going to react positively in a results-only work environment. So I know everybody on the call today probably has a different thing about what they're trying to accomplish in terms of what it is that they need: more talent, productivity, whatever. And we work with organizations to understand what measures are most important.
Yeah.
So that we can focus on those as the culture's evolving and do any course correction necessary.
Leah, you're popping on.
Just flagging in the chat. There are a couple questions that came in. So questions and observations. So first was, is this actually from Melanie, an entrepreneurial way of approaching work? So I guess the question is, does this only work for small organizations or, fast driving entrepreneurial shops?
You know what? I love that question, Melanie. And I'm going to mention CMHC again, because they're a large organization. And sometimes you think entrepreneurial can't happen there.
Mm-hmm.
But one of their values is own the work.
Yeah.
And you might call that entrepreneurial, right? Own my work.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a session, and I'm getting to the end of the brain rewiring. And a person raises up their hand and they go, oh, now I get what you mean by own the work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the entrepreneurial thing we're talking about. There's a lot of things, the values of an organization that are put up on the walls, like you said, Glain.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to be the values and embody them, they can't just be on the wall. So when somebody says, oh, I get own the work, it's because of autonomy and accountability that it becomes theirs. Mm-hmm. That's why that happens. And people, they not only own their work, but there's another value that says, think yes first. I want to help everybody get to our goal. Mm-hmm. So if Glain isn't getting things packed fast enough over in her department and she reaches out to me, I will help her. Mm-hmm. I will figure out how I will help her, because we all want to do that together.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. A lot of that's my observation of a lot of companies. We have these competency models and we have these values, but we don't get into what that really means and how that means
right.
to show up here. And I think that's really what you're doing, is out of all the behaviors things, you're really putting a very sharp point on results, accountability, ownership, like that, which is really the heart of why we go into work. That's the paycheck. And I know Leah's popping on to talk about vacation days, because I saw a comment in there about, because I think that's the other thing we hear about Roe, is that it's unlimited vacation, take time off whenever you want. And that always freaks everybody out, because they're like, how's that gonna work? My labor lawyer freaks out about that. I'll tell you that much. Right.
Well, I can talk about that.
He hates that.
In a results only work environment, when people say, they have unlimited vacation or whatever, that's true. But here's what it really means. You're not tracking that time. So just in the big picture of it all, nobody knows how much vacation time anybody has over a year, because you might have a Wednesday afternoon where you go do something different than work, and you decide to take a week off here and a week off there. As long as you're getting your work done, you can take as much time as you need. Now, for Canada, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have a 2-week, everybody has to track 2 weeks of vacation.
Yeah. So
people do that. In a row, they just put it down on whatever system you need to put it in. It doesn't mean they only get 2 weeks.
Yeah. I think that's the mindset. Like, I think people hear that, but it's like, you can't just say unlimited vacation without having it really tied into results. And that's what people do. So when you said earlier, you can't cherry pick what you want out of this. No. What you have to do is think, we are shifting our focus in our organization, and this is what it's going to look like. And it may feel uncomfortable, and it requires new behaviors and habits for all of us, but we now are clear on the road we're taking. So we are coming up on time, Jody. I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to thank you so much for kind of sharing with us the Roe philosophy and everything about Roe. And I know we'll be sending out an email, everybody. You'll get this in a recording, as well as some, additional material from Jody and Roe. And obviously, if anybody wants to learn more, we'll have Jody's contact information, so you can reach out to her directly to talk about it, what it might look like, because this truly is an opportunity for us to rethink how we want to come back in to workplaces, or not back into workplaces, how we want to reinvent work during this pause in the pandemic. Okay, so I've got a couple of announcements. I'm going to bring up my slides again real quick and share with you guys what's coming up next. I think everybody knows what we do, but we are the behavior change specialists. So if you need some support around Roe, Jody and I are looking at how we can help organizations really shift their mindset and behaviors together on some of this stuff, but reach out to us on that. And in terms of what's coming up on our end, we've got the Roundtable for Leaders winter cohort is going. This is a VP senior director level group. So if you have somebody in the organization who's maybe just been promoted, getting ready for a promotion, this is perfect for them to figure out, how do I need to be showing up? 1 seat left. You can send me an email for more info. If you haven't got my book, buy my book. And buy Jody's book too. She's got 2 of them out there. And finally, we've got next up in a couple of weeks is my friend Nicola Taggart, who is going to be on to talk to us about how to calm the chaos, something we all need right now. So thank you everybody for being with us today, and recording for this session will go out so you can share it with those who've missed it or other people in the organization that you think should know about ROW and all things results only. So Jody, thanks again for being with me today.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.